Issue bounties in open source. Are they useful? Let's have a chat about it. So I'm going to talk about my first experience coming across issue bounties with Bookstack, my open source project. So it was on this issue here. So this issue, XML import, is quite abstract, but it's a fair request just for importing XML format content into the system primarily from other tools. It's the kind of thing that I'd close off now because it's so broad in terms of what tools do we support and what exactly do those formats look like and do we provide support for, like how deep is that support. Plus, generally now I don't do anything that's like relying on other platforms because, you know, these are big platforms, Evernote and other platforms. It's just a lot to test against and there's a lot to learn their formats and there's a lot to support as well and know how different users use them in different ways. So generally it's not something that I'd look to implement, and eventually I'll close this off, hence why it's closed, because it's quite generic. But yeah, again, it's a fair request that users do have. And then, so this was open in 2016, and some comments in 2018. And now this is where the bounties come in. So someone's come here, I posted a $25 bounty here. I'm sure others would love to be able to switch off Evernote and Confluence. So again, they want to import from other platforms. I think it's quite an innocent idea, and I think this person is very well intentioned. You know, they want to help and they put some money. You know, they're investing themselves, doing what they can to try and help the project, but for a feature that they want within that. Now, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that. I just think it's one of those things, issue bounties, that people think is an ideal and is always welcome and should always work. At least that's what I thought when I was new to open source, in quite a naive view. I thought, yeah, it's a win-win situation. You put up some money and then the project or whoever contributes that feature or that code then can get money. They're happy because money's being provided, and then you're happy as the person putting up the bounty because you've got the feature. And then the project's got something as well. It's got the feature. It's a win-win. Now, actually experiencing that, I think it's quite a different scenario. From my view, this person has now put up money and then put a financial incentive for someone to come along and implement this, but I'm not sure what this is still, you know, at this stage. They've mentioned a couple of platforms, but even just supporting Evernote and Confluence that they've mentioned in their comment, that's going to be a massive ask. And it's going to be a burden of support that I, as the project maintainer, would have to then bear from implementation. That's the thing with most issues. It's the point of like maintenance, the ongoing support, helping users that come up with queries when they use these features. That's the real cost here. The money for the implementation is fine, and that does still take effort, but it doesn't actually solve the real burden of what this would provide to the project. Again, I just want, I'm sure this person's well intentioned. It's very kind that they've offered a bounty there, but I just don't think it works for this project. Now, if we have a look at this actual bounty, so it's on Bounty Source, we'll check that out. And by the way, just as a caveat, I don't mean security bounties or maybe other kinds. I just mean like things like feature-based bounties. That's what I really want to get into here, because that's when this certain dynamic comes up in this kind of scenario that I'm talking about. So on here, this has basically just copied in the description from the original author up here. It's got that data and that's part of the bounty. So again, there's nothing defined within that. It's still very unclear what this would look like from someone looking at this, which is how a lot of these platforms operate. They're going to be looking through here, looking through the list of available bounties, finding something that looks possible in their code language maybe, and then they'll work to this basically. Really, they just need to get some XML importing and that'll be paid out. But then, of course, that doesn't really help me as the project maintainer, because the user doesn't want a feature just to do something very barely functional. They want some functionality. They want their content from another platform to be imported. So yeah, it creates this odd dynamic of what is actually wanted to get this bounty, and then what am I going to accept, which could be something completely different. And again, I haven't confirmed that I would want to accept this feature yet. Nothing's been indicated like that. I mean, just alone this kind of thing being posted is a bit strange to me, because at no point I don't think I've ever signed up for Bounty Source. I had to look through my emails just now. I couldn't find anything where I'd signed up. The first mention I got was this GitHub issue. So this has been opened almost looking like on my behalf. Like, it looks like it could be something official that the Bookstack project has posted, but I certainly didn't post up this bounty or make this available in any way, at least as far as I can remember. So this gets posted, and I mentioned in my comment here, I'm still not sure about bounties applied to bugs or having features dictated by money, and that's quite a large issue as well. As more money gets put on this, then essentially it gets taken priority in some sort of ways, because it's going to prioritize that for other people wanting to contribute for that bounty. And then once someone's put something across, then there's a bit more pressure on me to then look at that and accept that. And personally, within my project, I'm really not comfortable with that whole dynamic of having money guide to the project in terms of its features. I started this as a free alternative to other platforms, and now it's coming almost like around to then we'd be turning into what we created to be an alternative to, in that I don't want the platform to be driven by money. I want the platform to ideally serve the users that it's useful to, and a lot of those might not have financial backing, and I don't want that to be a barrier to my project. So yeah, it creates this whole interesting dynamic as soon as you get money involved into features. And that's the thing I've experienced a lot since, but not really on a bounty level, but by sort of commercial entities coming to me and say, hey, I want to pay for this feature. And then a lot of the time there's an awkward conversation of, I don't see that working out for the platform, or that doesn't really help anyone else. So yeah, I don't want to go through that process. I'll probably talk about more about that in a different video. But yeah, you definitely get a sense of that here. And again, I continue there that a general XML import might not be a way to achieve this because of the different formats and things. And I mentioned there an API that people can script against, which is definitely the route that I've gone down. So now Bookstack has a much more developed API, and whenever these things pop up now, I say, okay, what are we missing from the API? We'll support you in an abstract way. I don't want to build to other platforms. If we can put the interfaces there to make other things possible by users, then I prefer to go down that route. And that's what I've suggested there. After then, so that was on the 27th of November, so only a few days after, then someone has opened a pull request against this issue. So added import book page. Set up very basic import system that imports a book and creates a new page. Does not work with PHP doc, as they do not export to a single XML, and they say addresses that issue. So from what I remember looking through the code, it is functional. They've gone to some effort, so nothing against this person that's come here to offer this feature. It does, as far as I can remember, kind of bare minimum. It imports some XML into content into Bookstack, but I don't really know what it's importing, what that format really looks like, what platforms might use that format. They specified what it doesn't work with, but I don't know what it does work with. From what I remember, I didn't ever see this user previously in kind of Bookstack issues and pull requests or anything previous. So I think they would have basically discovered this through the bounty source itself, seen this and gone, okay, I've got some skills, maybe they know Laravel framework used, I can contribute that feature. And they've basically done exactly what it says on the tin to import XML into the platform. Now this is open, this puts an interesting dynamic on me, because what happens to that money? Now it's on me to decide whether someone else's work gets paid, essentially, for something that I've never accepted or never asked for. It puts me in this really weird position, and I've never really been comfortable with that. I don't want to decide whether someone else gets paid, especially at this time. I'm not getting paid for that. And that's fine if other people get paid before me, but I didn't really want to worry about payment. I was just trying to build an awesome platform. Having this weird payment dynamic, whether I'm deciding if someone benefits from the work and the time spent, because they might have come to this thinking that I've put that bounty up or I've approved that as part of Bookstack. Yeah, definitely a very strange dynamic. And as I've done here, which was quite common because I was never very good with pull request, I left this open for way too long, not really knowing what to do with this. And then essentially I said thank you, but I didn't really want to merge it because of the same reasons that I closed off the issue. It was just too abstract, and we want to focus on providing the API rather than a specific or generic, in this case, import. Now, I'm not saying that bounties can't work. I think if you're set up for it and you're supporting it from a project's point of view, in terms of maintaining exactly what the scope of things are, what items are posted, and how that process goes through, I think they could be perfectly fine. And I see a lot of success on Bounty Source of different people using it. If you go to Teams, there's been a lot of payouts, a lot of big companies here that are doing, a lot of cash through this system and probably having a whole lot of success. So I don't want to bash on issue bounties generally. I think it can be done very well. It just isn't always a great solution for every project, and I think it's kind of a project by project basis, whether the project's set up from like a financial and team point of view, and even just the philosophy point of view, like the money-based concerns that I have, and not wanting issues to be dictated by money. It doesn't really work well for me there. And I think also it's kind of dependent on the platforms in use as well, like what we're seeing on that issue on Bounty Source here. It's not exactly clear who this is from or if this has been approved by the project. So the person coming to it didn't know that they might be wasting their time. So that's definitely an element to that. As a side note, I just looked into Bounty Source and it looks like a lot of companies are no longer using it. It got taken over by a crypto team or crypto company at some point. And you see that when you go to Bounties view, you've got some different crypto options here. Not really sure how they work. And they also changed their terms of service to say they would just keep bounties if they weren't paid out within a year or something like that. But I think they rolled back on that. But yeah, not sure what's going on with them now, if they're still recommended. But this is the one that I've come across at least, and that's the scenario which I've come across. But since this issue here, I really haven't seen much more kind of the same scenarios of people posting bounties. Definitely has been mentioned quite a few times, but I'm usually quick to put a stop to it. I just say, hey, I don't really do bounties. As I said earlier, the main thing I get is people or companies offering payment for specific things, but then it's usually negotiated directly via email. Yeah, I think that's everything that I've got to say on the matter. Again, that's just my experience, and they can work. They just don't work for me, but they might work for you. But if you've got experience with bounties, let me know in the comments, or if you've got any tips about how I should have done things, let me know. But other than that, that's everything. See you next time.